Okay, can I ask, I'll take it as a good sign that you're still talking. Hopefully it's not about what you're going to have for lunch. Okay, can I get some examples, please? If you are comfortable, find a microphone and let me hear some of the examples that you can think of. Yep. Okay, folks.
Yeah, hi, my name's Serdik. I work in London, and the example that came to mind for me was really around people who've used the mental health system,
Yep.
and the kind of really deep trauma of particularly being an inpatient, and how now when people come into contact with services, it's like the enemy is the system,
Yep.
whether the health system or the social care system, and those stories get told on generations, and to try and co-produce change is quite difficult in those circumstances.
Great. That's a great example. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I want to reference this a little bit. If I could go back on the slides. If I go back to this one. One of the challenges we face in the modern world is that the way that we have been evolutionarily constructed was for a series of threats which were generally external. In the modern world, the threats that face us are much more subtle. You know, we're not going to be attacked by a wild animal generally walking down the streets of London. Those are not the kind of threats. There's a Korean philosopher who wrote a book called The Burnout Society. And he made an argument that actually the challenge, the malaise of modern life is that the threats that provoke this response, that take us out of our serenity, are pernicious. They are no longer pirates marauding us. They are no longer the sort of the invasive illnesses that could destroy us. They have become internal threats. They're to do with what people experience in the workplace, the pressure that we're under to perform, some quite esoteric challenges that we face. And if that is true, then those become the source of our trauma. So trauma is not limited to the kind of big dramatic things. You know, we live with people going through very bad divorces, people having terrible experiences in the workplace. These are the stuff of normal life. And those become the source of this. So this is a complicated situation. It is not binary. It's not that there are bad guys and good guys and we've been hard done by it. There's a complex range of factors to which we are responding and relating that can potentially traumatize us. And it makes it even more difficult when we come on to this issue of attribution. How do I know? What actually is my body reacting to when I'm feeling so anxious and scared? What is it that it's reacting to? And when that just becomes the norm, so I'm thinking about the drug users and where the system has become the enemy, and the system has become the threat. Other examples, please. Anybody else happy to share? I won't hold it against you.
So can I just say something on
Yeah.
that? Just that I think for those who've used inpatient services and been held against their will,
Yeah.
it's a very direct physical
Absolutely.
threat. It's not a systemic.
No.
It's actually
Absolutely.
it's much more visceral.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Hi. I think in Holland it's more like polarization and not accepting the difference our authenticity.
Yeah. Sorry, could you say that again? I didn't catch it.
I think in Holland it's more about polarization.
Polarization, yeah.
And especially when I think Corona hits that polarization part real hard. But
Yeah.
I think polarization on I am more authentic on this part, and worldview exists together instead of one worldview is dominant.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem in Holland.
Yeah. I think it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? One more, and then we'll move on. Yep, please.
So in my country, there are different issues ongoing, but now I am thinking about the children, because they are ongoing about the unimaginable stress. So they are living in the war country. They need to be aware that we don't know the future, how to build it, what we can do, how we can develop this future. And also they are still pressed by the school. They need to learn, they need to behave, they need to be the normal in unnormal times. So when I'm thinking about the children in our country, I do really believe that we will find a way how to went with them through these difficult times with less trauma as it is possible. Because indeed we need to invest a lot of efforts in this issue, I think.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, one of the challenges, so you know, if we remain hopeful, then what will happen with Ukraine, there will come a point where you will have peace. And then there is a process of reconstruction and reconciliation and dealing with this. And what I would say, based on our experience, is there's often a tendency to try and do that too quickly, because the past has been so horrible that there's a desire to move on, to get on with things, and to try and make it okay again very quickly. And you quite rightly identify the impact this has on children. That I think that generations grow up with this. And instead of thinking of this in terms of, which I think politicians often do, which is we need to get this sorted, I would reflect rather what I heard you saying earlier on, which is that you are putting in place systems now, which as they roll forward will be mature enough to deal with these situations as they emerge, because I promise you they will emerge, and they will emerge in 10 years' time, and in 20 years' time, and in 30 years' time. So the challenge is, how do we reflect on our systems now, understanding that we need to design them for situations that aren't yet necessarily visible to us, but which are going to emerge in the future. And it brings together, in my mind, challenges around public policy, how we organize ourselves, and an understanding of mental health, and particularly specifically in violent situations, the impact that conflict and trauma has on mental health and therefore on public systems. So I work at the minute I'm an independent consultant. I work a lot in the public sector. I work in the health service a lot. And I can see that the structures within the health service, are profoundly affected by living with years of violence. I work a lot with senior civil servants across other government departments. The way people organize themselves is affected by 30 years of violence. They don't recognize it, don't necessarily say it. It doesn't set up intentionally. It just is. It's a natural reaction to try to create some form, to try to create some order, to create a bit of stability. But it's very real. And the challenge with it is, the danger with it actually is that it fixes a society at a particular point where it's that, is it Goldilocks position? Except that is a good position, not too hot, not too cold. But it positions a society where it's not so bad that people are killing themselves again, or killing each other. They are killing themselves, and that's part of the problem. But neither is it so good that people are thriving again. And it's that kind of middle bit of anxious stability that is where I think we are, where I come from. And what changes that is people interpreting it differently. So so when we talk about trauma, and certainly in response to world conflicts, there is this kind of initial thing, which is we need people to get therapy, and we need to treat PTSD, and we need to treat mental illness, all of which is absolutely true. But there's something beyond that, which is also about understanding our public life, civic society, our public institutions through the lens of trauma and through the lens of violence and our history. And being cognizant of that as we start to do it. And I tell you, it's really difficult. The language is difficult because I'm not sure the language of trauma works for it, because trauma is so heavily associated with the pathology. But it's the only word I know at the moment. And all I know is that by bringing that lens into these things, it can change the way that people organize themselves, and that can be a good thing. So the question is what to do. Certainly, it is important to treat the symptoms for individuals. I think it is very important for those of you in mental health services to be able to understand and make explicit the link between the lived out mental illnesses and the experience of trauma. So whether that is personal in terms of a person's history, their experience of abuse or adverse incidents, or whether it is a community experience of violence, there is even if a person isn't presenting with classic PTSD symptoms, their mental illness will have some kind of link back into those violent or traumatic experiences. And it's really important to deal with that. Again, in Northern Ireland, I think we had the highest levels of individuals within Northern Ireland who reached the threshold for PTSD. So, and it's high in veteran communities. It will be high in Ukraine. As peace comes, those levels will be high. And it's really, really important, same as with victims, people who have been obviously affected. If a society does not find quickly a way to deal with that positively and graciously and generously, it becomes something that just eats away at the moral standing of a society. It really does, and I would say that's the situation that we have where I come from. That being unresolved is a disgrace, and it's a disgrace in the world, on the world stage, that we're in that position. Increased trauma literacy, helping people understand their experiences. That doesn't mean there's a lot of talk about trauma-informed practice, which I think is really important, also really good. This is something a bit more than that. It's this kind of conversation. It's having a think about how does this affect public services? How does it affect the way we choose to relate to one another? How does it affect how we organize our sport, our literature, our art? How does this affect how we relate to one another? And also to be conscious of the othering. Because when the real enemy is gone, we find our enemies locally. So what happens is that, the big enemy goes, so we pick on marginal groups. So Northern Ireland is not great in terms of its relationship with LGBTQ plus people. It's not good in terms of domestic violence, particularly violence against women. The violence that was expressed to one another has become, thrown up, and it lands, and where it lands is against vulnerable, marginalized groups. People don't necessarily make the link between that and the Troubles, but it's there. So it's important to kind of understand their experiences and give people the opportunity to be able to interpret that way and to provide attribution, to allow people to make sense of trauma experiences and linking their current experience to past experiences. And then to promote psychological reconciliations. And this is where it brings us into language. I was so pleased with how the session started this morning. We need to talk much more about kindness, compassion, how we relate to one another. In the world that I work in a day job, I work, as I said, in the health service. There's a huge amount of evidence to show that civility increases the outcomes, gives better patient outcomes in surgery. So, or in cancer treatment. If physicians are civil to one another, there is strong evidence to show that it produces better patient outcomes. So there is something about how we in society create ways that we can talk about what otherwise seem like very soft subjects or very personal things that are about just, what your disposition is. There's a huge amount of evidence to show that these kind of attributes, understanding, connectedness, that these things actually are what make a difference. Because what they do is they challenge the instinct for a traumatized person or a traumatized community to other. So my instinct, if I was listening to the really inspiring two women who were speaking first today, and I was thinking to myself, why wouldn't I be kind? Because there are plenty of times I haven't been kind. And I thought, the reason that I'm not kind, why would I not? And the reason would be that I felt threatened or I felt scared. So somehow if I met you and I felt a bit, uncomfortable or threatened or scared, then I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to be nice to you. I'll try not to be nasty, but I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to be kind. And that's my link with this. So what if I walk around with a radar that's on all the time, and what I expect all the time is that you're going to threaten me, that you're going to hurt me, that you're going to cause me harm? It means I'm going to retreat. So the challenge to be kind, the challenge to be compassionate, also challenges me to think about what I am scared of and where that fear comes from. And it forces me to, or it challenges me anyway, to think about how I might deal with that. That's for me as an individual. We can do that as groups. We can do that as communities. We can do that as countries. All it takes is strong leadership and a clear, simple, in one way, message. But understanding that behind that simple message, there is a lot of evidence and understanding that shows the pain that people can be living with that maybe makes their behavior less than 100%. Our time is nearly up. We have 1 minute 30 seconds left. I think this is great. 1 minute 30 seconds left. I'm quite happy to finish there, but I want to finish with a quote. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm going to read it to you and just let it sit with you. The ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. So it goes. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. I hope what we've been talking about this morning helps us understand a little bit why our compulsion might be to do that, but what a great challenge it is to try and do something different. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. It proves there are great concerns, but also helpful strategies to keep each other aware of how this works and how we should be friendly and hospitable to one another instead of trying to do something with our hate the wrong way. We're now moving into lunch, network lunch break. So you can network. It's your last opportunity to visit the Innovation Marketplace. They'll be closing down. Please enjoy. And if you need a breather or you would like to relax or recharge your energy, join a mini Tai Chi workshop on the yin-yang of leadership. In, breathe, grounding, centering, and relaxation. Okay, I feel relaxed already. Details and location are in the app under the Community tab at the bottom of the homepage as Meetup, right? We'll be back for the last round of breakout sessions right after lunch, followed by a break, then a plenary session led by Indigenous colleagues, and then our closing session. Time has flown, hasn't it? Okay, thank you all. Enjoy lunch. See you later.
How can I find a reason?